solid. Uh, Missed the boat a bit on the gifted in school. So I said in school, I qualified it, Sarah. um, but if I'm the only one talking, I can get real bored. And so this is not my presentation, it's yours. This is your time, your session. You've taken time out of your lives to be here. And so I have a whole bunch of slides, which Sarah knows I will share at the end of it so that you all can have access to them. If we get through them all, great. If we don't, great. The point being, you have something that comes up, a question, a comment, something to add, jump in and interrupt me. When I get into presenter mode, I don't see you as well. So, Sarah, if you can like also kind of keep an eye on the chat for me, that'll be great. And so tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the social, emotional, and academic needs of our 2E folks. So I'm going to share my screen. Um, and I want to share. Hold on.
Should be
Wait,
able
before I
to.
do that, I want to first start my presentation so that you don't have to see my messy desktop. All right, now I can go back and share screen one, and that should give you the screen, I think.
Yep, yep.
Perfect. All right,
With
so
your
let's,
fancy new graphic.
I'm sorry.
With your fancy new graphic for
I
Elmbridge.
know you haven't seen it yet, I don't think. So
Mm-mm.
there is our fancy new Elmbridge University graphic. As for those of you who don't know, who may be familiar with Bridges Graduate School, we have for now 7 years. I had to think about it. Been focused on certificate, master's, and doctoral programs. As we move forward in the future, we will be expanding into undergraduate programs as well. So, hence our new name, moving from graduate school to Elmbridge University. So, we're very excited about that. Tonight we're gonna hit on our three goals for the evening. Fostering a positive learning environment, developing a strength-based paradigm, and acknowledging the areas of challenge that our 2E students face. And so as educators, our goals for these twice exceptional students are really focused on these three things, and understanding that they have these unique challenges, but they also come with these amazing strengths. And so, how do we build a learning environment that allows them to really spread their wings and show all the awesomeness that they have in them? And so I want to start with this little video. So I don't know if you're familiar, if you've with this, but I want to start with this because I think it really sets the tone for what we want to talk about tonight. So hopefully all of this works.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child.
Okay, I'm stopping right there. Are you hearing it?
Always stick out to me.
Are you able to hear the video?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Because I forgot to hit the magic button.
Was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen, focus, and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. Then, to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually, even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." So I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands, and that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, looked at me and he yelled, And he said, Clint, stay after class. And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me. And I will never forget it. So I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. He walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, Clint, come here. I want to talk to you. And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you. And he said, have you ever thought about playing the drums? And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a trumpet. From that moment on, I've never put those sticks in. I've toured, recorded, played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me. He saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
So
I have a lot of memories.
I will
One that
admit,
stuck out to me.
I
Though,
will
was
try
when
to.
I was about 10 years
There
old.
we go. There we are. I can't tell you how many times I've used that video, and it still makes my eyes tear up a little bit. But so really, at Elmbridge, our mission is really to advance the understanding of educators of the needs of our twice exceptional learners. And we do this through advocacy, leadership, and research. And so our mascot is a frog. And our motto, in the wise words of that great scholar, Kermit the Frog, is it's not easy being green. Our 2E students have these complex challenges. That's their blue, while simultaneously possessing incredible areas of strength and intellect. They're yellow. And so consequently, these students are living in the green where these strengths and challenges intersect. And it's up to us to find the ways that supports all of their needs so that we can help them grow to their full potential. We need to all be that Mr. Jensen for those students. To that end, I propose that we need to understand that these students are ADHD. And so, to be clear, the focus of a lot of my work has been specifically in 2E, has been around gifted and ADHD. Again, a lot of us when we start doing research and go into academia, draw from what we know personally. And so my personal journey informed a lot of my decision to focus in this area. But when I got to thinking about this, we focus so much on deficit and disorder, challenge, calling these kids learning deficient, but they're really learning different. And so I was like, what's a better terminology to come up with? And I apply this not just to our gifted ADHD 2E students, but really to all of our 2E population. No matter their strengths or their challenges, they're attention divergent, hyperactive, gifted. And so this type of paradigm shift really alters the focus from their challenges and instead highlights their motivations, their strengths, their perseverance, and their resilience. It's those innate qualities that really make them special. And so as we move forward tonight, I'll be using the terms gifted, ADHD, twice exceptional, kind of interchangeably. However, no matter what, at the end of the day, it's important that we understand this, that these students are gifted first. So consequently, our focus at Elmbridge is to focus on a strength-based paradigm that supports these students. And in doing so, what we're doing is reinforcing that with these students, that we see them for the gifted individuals they are. So this means that our strategies for serving these ADHD students include addressing their strengths and interests, providing those appropriate social and emotional supports, offering adaptations for academic strengths and accommodations for their learning needs, and really creating a supportive, safe, problem-solving culture that values their success. Make no mistake, it is important to balance both their giftedness and the needs created by the manifestation of their neurodiversity. However, many researchers, including myself, have highlighted that talent development and a strength-based approach may be the most crucial piece to addressing the needs of the whole 2E learner. So when their strengths are emphasized in their educational experiences, then their self-concept increases and they have a more positive outlook on their areas of challenge. So a little bit of diving into the brain only for a couple of slides. But just so we kind of understand broad overview of the neurological process that's involved here. And so we know that that dopamine is an important neurotransmitter that we associate. It controls our motivation, our emotion, our understanding of pain and pleasure. And in many of our 2E students, including those with ADHD, we have seen that there is insufficient dopamine in their system. So this attributes back to their lack of focus and low motivation. It also, for our ADHD students, is a huge piece of their impulsivity, right? That lower dopamine causes them to be more impulsive, sometimes even seeking out conflict. It brings down their filter. And so what we need to do is think about how can we get that dopamine to release. And so that means we've got to get up out of our seats and get our students moving, laughing, interacting, being a part of a community, feeling that sense of accomplishment. And so we know when that happens from studies that have been done, we see increases in long-term memory when there is trust and positive feelings. So we're really going to focus a lot on some environmental issues. We're going to talk tonight about some personality prototypes that exist for these students. And so let's dive into it. This is the fun stuff. So in our work, we've really found that successful programs that meets twice exceptional needs are those that include these 5 basic pillars. First, you need to have a psychologically safe environment in which these students feel a sense of belongingness, that acknowledge and address their challenges and their strengths, and builds on their own self-esteem. There must also be a tolerance for the asynchrony that exists for these students. We know that all gifted students can experience asynchrony in their intellectual, physical, and social emotional development, particularly at a young age. But for our twice exceptional students, this asynchrony can continue into adolescence and even into adulthood. And so, as educators, we need to understand that these discrepancies are even greater for these students than their gifted peers because they really struggle with the asynchrony of their intellect and how they're able to express and use their smarts. Singer referred to this as asynchrony squared, and it can make our twice exceptional students feel even more vulnerable in education settings. I often talk about these students having a foot in two worlds, in their gifted world and the special education world, and they don't feel like they fit in either one. The other thing that we need to really understand is that these students need time. They need time to process. They need time to think, and they need time to take a break when things are becoming too much for them. For these students, sometimes what can appear to us as procrastination is really a need for incubation, right? I experience this in my own work. I find that with some tasks that involve a heavier mental load, I really need that time to incubate on what I need to produce. And even though I may not physically be working on the task in the moment, I'm continuing to process, to think, and to plan. I don't know about y'all. I'm a shower thinker, right? That's when I do my best thinking is in the shower. It's just me alone. I can focus. There's no distraction, and it really helps me connect. Finally, we need time to approach learning from a strength-based, talent-focused lens. And this means that we need to focus on learning strategies that address students' strengths and interests while differentiating and dual differentiating their curricula to move students forward to appropriate levels of depth and complexity. Again, this means that we have to recognize that the student is gifted first, and they're they deserve these opportunities to develop their intellectual talents and their interests while also providing them with the support that they need in those areas of challenge so that they can fully demonstrate their talents and interests. By putting their strengths at the forefront, these twice exceptional students are able to really build on the inner resources they already have, which puts them in a better position to work on areas of difficulty. Simply put, if we allow them to grow in one area, other areas can quickly follow. So we know our ADHD students are complex, and one of the challenges that we face is how to best identify these students and meet all of their needs. So a few years ago, Baum and Schrader developed the suite of tools assessment that really takes a 360 approach to understanding who these students are and how to meet their needs as 2E learners. And one of the tools in that assessment is the QPI, the Quick Personality Indicator. And what this tool does is it helps with understanding the different ways that twice exceptional students interact with the world around them based upon the degrees of their personality types. In this piece of the assessment, students' personality types are broken down into four main categories, which you see on the screen: the practical managers, the learned experts, the creative problem solvers, and the people persons. And so if we're going to effectively work with these students, their families, we need to understand what makes them tick. So it's before we jump into this, it's really important that everyone understand that no one individual is only one of these personality types. Rather, all of these personalities exist within all of us, but to varying degrees, with one or more personality types being more predominant from the others. So we aren't going to spend a whole lot of time on these personality traits, and some of you um uh but some of you may be interested. So one of the in kind of learning a little bit about yourself. So I'm going, when I send this out, I'm going to include, I didn't think we'd have time to do it tonight, but include some instructions for to take the adult version of the QPI so that you can kind of see your own. And so, but if we jump over and look, you can see this is my personality profile. So I'm primarily a people person and a creative problem solver, a learned expert, and my lowest is a practical manager. Now in my job I have to sometimes draw on all of these at various times. And so again, it's really important to understand it's not that any of us are any one of these personality types. All exist with us, in us. It's just to varying degrees, and learning when do we pull that practical manager side. For me, as a people person and a creative problem solver, I don't have fun when I have to use my practical manager side, but I know it's one of the elements that I have to one of the tools in my toolkit. So let's talk a little bit about each of these. We're also going to go through a sample unit on plants, so that you can see how you might differentiate a unit to or a lesson to best fit each one of these personality types. So our first one is our practical manager. These are our timekeepers, the organizers. They're very concrete, sequential. And so when you think about these, we find that perfectionism tends to be higher in this group. I talked about that procrastination versus incubation. In this case, for these kids who are practical managers, sometimes procrastination is actually procrastination because there's this innate fear of getting it wrong the first time around. They're very rigid. They have a difficult time with change, and they can be easily be overstimulated. Um, and so the types of activities they want it to be very practical, very useful, very straightforward, with very specific directions. There cannot be any ambiguity in the directions you give them. It's step one, step two, step three, step four. They like to know, they like to show what they have learned. Very straightforward. It's just in terms of what are the facts, just the facts, ma'am. And what are the concepts that they've learned. And they like to then present this work. Charts are great, fact sheets, graphics, diagrams all work well for the practical manager so that they can just present the facts quickly and succinctly. So if we're talking about our unit on plants, a way you might differentiate for this group is to give them this performance task to make and present a 3D model of a plant cell to show understanding of the cell structure and the use of their parts. Okay, that's the product. That's the end goal. Here are the directions you might give. And again, think about what we talked about for these folks. They need very straightforward. They no ambiguity. So what are you going to do? You're going to design a three-dimensional model, following the diagram that's already on your desk. All of the materials that you need are on the red table in the middle of class. Choose from those materials. You're going to be working at your desk, and you need to finish making the project before the end of the day, right? So they've got all the steps, they've got it very clear. They're following the diagram on the desk so that they know exactly what goes. They have an idea of the types of materials that they should choose from. They know where they're going to be working, and they know what the deadline is, right? Very specific. For these days, for these kids, it's a good day when they're able to get these are your list makers. They're able to check all the boxes. And some of you may know these kids, some of you may be these kids, right? You don't want any surprises. Everything goes as planned. There's no disruption to the schedule. For the last minute assembly that wasn't on the schedule, that's a surprise to them, throws their entire day off. They need to have a clear agenda to follow. Handouts are really great because it gives them that important information. These are the kids that when they get home, they're going to sit down and do their homework before they go outside and play or have any distractions. They want to plan, they want to plan, they want to plan, right? And they want to stick to that plan. And life should be very predictable and follow a schedule. I am married to a practical manager. It's very interesting in our household because my husband could, if he could know that every day was going to be like the last one and could even eat the same meal every day, he would be just fine. No surprises, right? Um, for these kids, when they're in a struggle, the keys to negotiation are really being very practical and precise, offering a purely objective argument based on facts, no emotion. It's very important to stay very calm with these kids and give them a chance to pilot, try, and evaluate the results of any solution. Works beautifully with these kids. Their workspace, these kids need a quiet place where they can do their work. They need to be away from any distractions, any additional noise, any activity. They need to be able to focus on what they're doing. The second personality type is the learned expert. These are our thinkers, right? They're sequential, but they're not concrete sequential. They're more abstract sequential. They love logic and theory. For these kiddos, they tend to be avid readers. They love debate, love to argue a point. They dive into nonfiction. They want to learn more about theories and generate interesting information and facts, which makes technology a very important tool for this group because they can easily access a ton of facts and be able to then start thinking about it and looking at it from multiple perspectives. They love to discern what are fact from opinion, right? And what are facts what are those, what is the information being presented? Is it logical that this would be true or false? Um, for these kiddos, again, theoretical, abstract activities, they do well with this because it allows them to think and synthesize a lot of the information and to be able to present that information as well as give their own opinions. Again, remember, these are your debaters. Getting them involved in speech and debate, great for these learned experts. Providing them with an opportunities to explore a variety of resources and opinions of recognized experts in their field of interest is fantastic. And so some final products for these kiddos would be editorials, participating, like I said, in debate, being able to conduct their own research and report out the results. Filmmaking is great. Documentary filmmaking is a great tool, as well as letting them develop if their interests skew towards politics, being able to develop political cartoons is another great resource for these kids. When we think about our unit on plants, you'll see that our performance task is going to be a little bit different for these groups. for these kids. So we want them to write an educational article that we're going to post on the class website that will inform others of what they have learned about the transfer of light into plant energy in class and through their own further research. Their article doesn't have to be only words, but can show information using video links and images. Because again, remember, technology is a great tool for these kids. All right. So you can see when you compare the first performance task to this one, a lot of this, it's a lot of the same elements. You're just presenting it in a different way that kind of fits best with their predominant personality characteristics. So for them, the directions look a little different, sequential, but more abstract. So for this, we tell them you're going to do some research. You'll need to find at least 3 additional pieces of information that they didn't learn in class, but that they find interesting and think that their classmates should know. We can give them some predetermined websites that are provided, so letting them visit some predetermined websites or giving them the opportunity to search the internet for information that they can understand and can put into their own words to help bolster their argument. And then finally, asking them to prepare an article as they would like it to be shown on the website. So that includes asking them to proofread and edit the article before it's uploaded, and including any images or links to videos that they would be using. For these kiddos, it's a great day at school when they've been able to get in a debate with a friend, or sometimes us as the teachers, when they've had time to read or surf the internet for new information, watch the news, dive into the History Channel, or really engage in some sort of mental challenge. And also giving them time to spend some time solving puzzles or playing on the computer or computer strategic computer games. And then also those opportunities to argue, discuss, and debate. They're okay with some ambiguity. Life's great when it's predictable, but they also understand that sometimes the routine's going to be jostled out, and they're okay with it. They can roll with that. For these kiddos, when you're thinking about how to negotiate, how to problem solve, again, presenting a very logical argument based on research is important, but it can be formal or informal. Unlike our practical managers who need it very direct, very formal, just the facts, here you can be, again, present it in a little more relaxed. The rules of debate work good with these kids. The 3-minute rule, you get 3 minutes to present your argument, 3 minutes to the other, 1 minute to rebut, 1 minute to rebut. And your role then becomes showing them as a role model how to function as a mediator so that they can begin to take on that role of mediator, building those skills in their own development. For these kids, they do really well working at a table in a library with their books spread out, where they can also have access to the internet, which allows them to really satiate their intellectual curiosity while they're studying about a topic that also enhances their learning. And so these are the kids that thrive. You can see a picture of Al Gore in his office. These are the people who you can walk in and it seems like disarray. You ask them for one piece of paper and they're like, oh yeah. And they pick up a stack and move it over and hand you the paper. They know exactly, it looks like disordered, but it's really orderly chaos. Works well. Third personality type for these kiddos is our creative problem solvers. These are our risk takers. They love to take risks. They seek adventure. They want to come up with new and fascinating ideas, taking something old and giving it a new way to think about it. For them, they're again great at inventing. They love games, love challenge, love being able to really express their creativity in new and unique ways. For these kids, they want activities that allow them to tap into that creativity and are very open-ended. Choice is really important for these kids. So giving them opportunities to choose from a variety of tasks would be great. Giving them things that and when those tasks, limiting the guidelines, limiting the directions, because they need to be able to kind of find their own way to get done. So when we think about our unit on plants, the way we present their task is going to be a little bit different. Choose one of the following activities to show your understanding of photosynthesis. All right. Here are the directions. You can use iMovie to explain how plants get their energy from the sun, or you can design a board game that helps others understand the stages of photosynthesis. You want them to make sure that the game is quote unquote ready to market and includes a beautiful game board that fits with the theme, that includes directions and has all of the materials that players would need. Or they could use recycled materials in the class to create a 3D model to show the different stages of growth. Or finally, their fourth choice might be to create a flip book to visually show the process of the plant growing from seed to mature plant. So you can see in this, the directions are really choose one of these things. You give them a basic idea. What is the purpose for what you're choosing? But then you let them run with it, right? For these kiddos, it's a good day when school was fun. They had a lot of choice and options. They love, again, activities with lots of creative problem solving, and when their own ideas were taken into consideration, and anytime you can run with them. So again, that choice is really important. These are the kids that when they're at home, they like to leave their options open, right? This is a little bit like me. I told you I live with a practical manager. My creative problem solving side makes vacations very interesting at our house. So over the years, we've come to an agreement because Rob likes to plan. He'll spend weeks and months mapping out a vacation, and he will develop I kid you not, a multi-page itinerary day to day, timed out, right? And so we've learned that we have one day that's a Rob day that's very planned out and structured, and one day that's a Matt day where we walk out of the hotel we're in and see what adventure we get into, right? For these kids, they love it for their way, and they don't take no for an answer. They're going to keep pushing because they need that creative energy has to come out. For these kids, learning how to negotiate and problem solve, again, choices and options where they are able to come up with their own really creative solutions with general guidelines, but nothing too specific. Allows them to really come at a problem from a new perspective that really matches their work, their personality. For these kiddos, they need space to spread out and move. Sitting at a desk does not work. They their best thinking may happen if they're laying on the floor or standing at a table, but bouncing. I had a parrot years ago. So I didn't tell you this about myself. I taught second grade reading language arts before I went into academia. And I had a parent on Meet the Teacher night who came up to me and it was like our principal never would release the class lists until that Thursday before the first day of school. And so parents would come, and this mom came up to me and she was like, "Oh, Matt, I was so relieved when I saw my son was in your class. If you teach him one thing this year, please teach him how to sit in his seat." And I just looked at her. I'm like, "Well, there's the principal. You may want to go see if you can negotiate a room change because that's not going to happen." I already knew this kid. I was also the gifted coordinator for the school. I had been working with him since he was identified in kindergarten. And I knew he was a creative person. He was a creative problem solver. He needed to move to think. And that's why he couldn't sit still. You know how he did his thinking? Standing up and bouncing, right? He was a bouncer, constantly on his toes. And if he was able to do that, he could focus and he could get his work done. Uh, again, laptops, tablets, anything that's portable is great for these kids because it allows them to move to different places. A few of you were on here earlier in the few minutes when I first logged on, and I told Sarah I was like trying to figure out everything because I haven't sat at my desk in so long. I'm a laptop top person. If you are on a meeting with me, you're going to see me at various points around the house, but very rarely. And if I'm in the office, it may be on the sofa behind me. But I very rarely am actually sitting at my desk doing my work because I can't. This is a challenge for me tonight, sitting at here and talking to you all for an hour and a half without moving around as much. You can see I'm a hands talker. I had to turn off the Zoom things, which sometimes get turned back on, and so I will inappropriately have balloons or fireworks flying over my head because I talk with my hands. Because if I'm sitting too long, I have to move somehow. The last group are people persons. These are our politicians. Are They tend to be sensitive, more emotional, creative artists. These students can be our dramatic kids, tend to be more artistic. Are great leaders because they draw people in. Their ability to connect with others is unmatched, and they genuinely care about and want to understand others' feelings. For these kiddos, the activities that are important for them, being able to express that creativity. You'll notice for our practical managers and our learned experts, there's some overlap. Our people persons and our creative problem solvers, you're also going to see some overlap. So including in some type of arts integration into their work is fantastic. They want the work they're doing to be relevant to them, relevant to the world around them, relevant to what's important, what they see as important in the world. They thrive on working in groups or with a partner. They struggle working alone. And they prefer these opportunities to really express their creativity in a variety of ways. So it might be through poetry or through performing arts or creative writing or blogging, journaling, right? But again, in expressing their understanding of the world around them in ways that are unique to them. So for these kiddos, the performance task are the directions. There are no further directions than this. In a small group, create a personification of the process of photosynthesis. You can add music and dance to really enhance the meaning. That's it. It's very open-ended, right? But again, it allows you to in that performance, in what they create, how are they checking off and meeting all of the requirements that you have for their understanding in the lesson. For these kids, school was great when everyone agreed, everyone got along, they had time to hang out with their friends. And what's really important is when someone told them that they were special or that they did a good job. They thrive on that positive reinforcement. Um, Again, for those keys to negotiation and problem solving, you've got to keep all of the language. Again, much like our practical managers, calm is very important. They don't respond well to high emotion. You want to keep the language very non-hostile, accusation free, and assure them all the way throughout that they are loved and respected despite whatever conflict. And they do well with a resolution that might be, we're just going to agree to disagree, but we're still friends and we're going to move on. Okay. For these kids, they get lonely if they're in an isolated space. So they need a place where they can be close to their peers, or if they're at home working, be where their families. Not knowing what else is going on in the classroom or the house is the distraction for them. Being alone is the distraction. They can't focus because their minds are constantly worrying. What's everybody else doing? What are they doing? I got to go find out, right? If they're in a place where they can be around all the action, it's great. I work from home the majority of the time. And it's me and two dogs. I have a lot of really in-depth conversation. There's always some sort of noise in the background, whether it be music or the television or something. I'm not paying attention to it, but it's just that idea that I have others around me. I can hear interactions going on, and that allows me to stay focused. Um, Also really important for this group is scheduling off task breaks that will give them that time to socialize, to be around others. For me, I tend to go to the gym during my lunchtime because then it's a little neighborhood gym. And that's my time to interact with others. I see other people from around the neighborhood. It's just a mile from my house. Nice days, I'll walk there. And talk to people along the way, right? Those breaks are the self rewards, and it allows them to be able to focus on a task, knowing that that break is coming up, and then they can reward themselves with some downtime where they can enjoy that interaction with others and then be able to jump back into their task and get the final work done. So that's a very quick overview of the four personality types. We're going to jump into learning environments, but I want to stop for a second and see, do we have any questions
So
or
mostly in
any?
the chat, we've been self-diagnosing.
That happens a lot. Wait till you get the QPI and you get
I
to
am
like
excited.
see how it all plays out, how your personalities break down. It's fun.
We had a serious discussion about the practical managers versus the creative thinkers and vacation planning. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
Are
believe
there any
Rob has
others
some.
out there that feel my pain?
I was gonna say that Rob has some kindred spirits here, like Carrie, who has planned her 2028 Disney trip with multiple pages. Disney people.
2028?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Uh, and
In
then
fairness, if you're gonna go Disney, do it right.
Well, there you go. I agree. I agree. Um, Perfect. All right. I love it.
we had people who really connected with the movement part of thinking, and maybe they could incorporate that in the classroom more. Um,
Fantastic.
yes, me who said, well, if I'm going to plan an itinerary, it's going to be on the back of a napkin. That Matt and I would get along well on vacation.
Yeah. Itinerary is very simple. Walk out the front door.
I mean, I need a little bit to know if I'm wearing flip-flops, Crocs, or sneakers, but other than
True.
that, you
I
know,
will check the weather.
yes. Um, and then somebody else really connected with the idea of being alone being the distraction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is hard with, you know, when you've got some of those people, like we were talking about this in the office the other day, that I was saying there's enough people working on different degree programs that we should have like a space in in our office where we can get together and do our homework and like keep ourselves on track. And my boss was like, that will not work for me. I need silence. I need like quiet. And like that strikes fear into my heart. Like I need the noise. I need the body doubling for the work. So
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just reminded me
I,
of when I was in school, I always had to have the TV on, or I always had to have some kind of noise or something when I would study it, and it would drive my mom crazy. She's like, "How can you possibly get anything done with all that noise?" I'm like, "If it's silent, then I'm inside my brain and I can't actually do what I'm supposed to be doing."
mhm.
yeah. It's hard. It's hard when we
Yeah, so
for the people person and the creative producer. These are, working in isolation is debilitating. It was an adjustment for me when I left a traditional university environment and came to then Bridges, now Elmbridge. Because and it was a conversation that Rob and I had. He's like, "You're going to be working from home, just you, or how are you going to handle that?" And I had to learn how to figure out and plan my day and to be able to figure out how I could be productive. And it was a struggle at first, because I felt like I had to be sitting at my desk all the time, and it would drive me nuts. And so now, after I've been here 5 years now, and I've developed this routine, and everybody knows my schedule. Everybody knows I'm going to take off my lunchtime and I'm going to go to the gym because that's my opportunity to socialize. But you have to find what works for you, and understanding ourselves helps us understand our kids better. I love it. Great discussions. As
Somebody had wanted
usual.
to say something.
Yeah, yeah, please.
I think it's under J Myth.
oh sorry. I just I see that other people have said this in the chat. Like I everything that you're saying is resonating with me in a big way. The challenge is like how do you meet the needs of those four learners in one space? Like
Yeah.
the the one that needs the quiet while the one that needs to bounce around that I mean I say all the time like no child needs to sit in my classroom like there's no reason to sit. I don't You can do whatever you need to do to learn, but then there's the child next to them that needs the divider around them to be able to learn as well. So just like
Right.
like balancing that is really challenging.
It is challenging. And one of the things I used, so when I was at the University of Houston, I was working with pre-service teachers, and we would talk about this. I would have them design typical pre-service teacher thing where I'd say, design your ideal classroom. But I said, you have to then present it and justify every decision you made from a social emotional perspective of the variety of students that you would have in your classroom. And so it really made them stop and think about, okay, let me look at my classroom space. How can I divide up the room so that I'm addressing all of these personality types? Where is my quiet place for my learned experts and for my practical managers, right? Where is that? And how do I give them that additional privacy they need, whether it be through those little trifold dividers or whatever they need so that they can block it out? Do they need some silencing headphones?
Yeah.
What do they need that will allow them to have that in a busy classroom? Because you're dealing with all of these personality types and making sure. So like my little guy who was the bouncer, I had him on the active side of the room, was his seat. We didn't have desks, we had tables, right? But he was on, and the kids learn how each other works and they respect that. And you build that environment of respect and understanding that everybody has different needs and learning, and they quickly catch on. If their needs are being met, they understand that someone else's needs are also being met. And so developing those clearly defined spaces that allow for those folks to work. And you can kind of find that it really starts with, first you can divide the room in half. Okay, I'm going to put my learned experts and my practical managers on this side. I'm going to put my people persons and my creative producers on this side. Okay, now how do I give them, then modify those halves to meet the needs of each individual
Right.
in quadrants? And then thinking about what additional resources can you bring in to allow that to happen. It's not easy, but we know, contrary to public opinion, teaching is not easy. And so it is one of our challenges, especially when we're in classrooms where space can be very limited. I was very lucky. I had a very large classroom, but it was unique in the building. It just happened to be the classroom I was assigned to, and then I never left it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that you said that was a major point is you also have to be able to spend the time and invest in building empathy within the students so they understand each other. I mean, that's another really
Exactly.
huge piece, right? So
Exactly.
I appreciate
Exactly.
what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're going to jump into that a little bit when we start. So our next portion, we're going to kind of talk about what are some learning environments that really support these students and help them thrive. And what we've come to understand is that we really need to address 5 specific dimensions within every learning environment: their intellectual environment, their social environment, their creative environment, their emotional environment, and the physical environment. And so we're going to talk about each one of these and kind of what goes into each of these environments, understanding that, again, just like the personality types, they all exist within all of us. Within our one learning environment of our classroom, we have to think about each of these 5 environments and how do we incorporate all of them to create a space where all of our kids can thrive and learn. So we're going to start with the intellectual environment. And this is the setting in which people are really engaging in that critical thinking piece, the reflection, that intellectual inquiry. And so it's characterized by an atmosphere of open-mindedness, creativity, intellectual stimulation, and it's really supportive of the exploration of new ideas and perspectives. So in this environment, interactions between curious and engaged learners is really encouraged and supported. And so when we're thinking about the intellectual environments, we want to encourage asking questions, seeking answers, and engaging in that critical analysis and debate. A place where our students are really able to express their thoughts and ideas freely without fear of judgment, and are really surrounded by others who are similarly engaged in that pursuit of knowledge and intellectual growth. The intellectual environment then fosters that personal growth. It builds on that creativity, and it really helps to develop those critical thinking skills. And it's essential for the advancement of and growth and development of their own knowledge, allowing them to explore new solutions to really complex problems that are relevant to them. And this is really the beginning of fostering that sense of community that we were just talking about, that where we understand that everybody in this classroom is an individual with a shared passion for that intellectual exploration, and we want to come together so we can learn and grow together in the ways that best fits our own needs. So this means, again, just like we talked about with the personality type, how are we going to differentiate the curriculum, the product type, or the content focus so that it matches our 2E students' personality profile, their interest, and their strengths. And allowing the students to really demonstrate their ideas and knowledge, not in some predetermined way that we've come up with, but allow them to explore what works best for them, whether it is videos or blogging or creative models or whatever it may be, simulations and role plays, activities, hands-on activities, problem-based learning. These are all really important pieces that go into developing this intellectual environment. Again, remember our 2E students are gifted first, so we need to, as much as possible, eliminate that rote learning and repetitive work. It's really important. And so that might mean thinking about their challenges. What can we eliminate or modify that may be common requirements around traditional quizzes or tests or class participation? How can we modify that to best fit the needs of our 2E learners? Maybe it's reducing the volume of work. Why do we, if we know that we have a 2E student who excels in math, who's really advanced in math, do we need to give them 20 problems, or can they demonstrate that they have a full grasp and understanding in 5, right? There comes a point when an A is an A is an A. So why are we going to keep giving them the same work and have them show the same thing over again? Use that opportunity in building that intellectual environment to really allow them to go in deep on a topic or accelerate as needed, is really important. We also need to think about the social environment, and we know that learning is a social experience. And for our 2E students, they may experience social isolation. Again, remember I talked about that sense of having a foot in two worlds and not really feeling like they fit in either one. But again, really we need to help them see that their advanced cognitive abilities, or we need to understand that their advanced cognitive abilities can sometimes lead to that sense of disconnect from their peers. And so this is where we also have to take in that asynchronous development piece, and understanding that mismatch that can create additional challenges in their social interactions, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. Our twice exceptional learners are often grapple with perfectionism. They're driven by that desire to either meet their own high standards or their expectations of others. Christy Spears Neumeister talks about that self-determined perfectionism versus socially prescribed perfectionism. Both, is the perfectionism coming from I have to do it because this is the standard of who I am, or I expect if I don't match up with what I perceive others think about me and being gifted, and I fail, then I've done something wrong. So that perfectionism is really a double-edged sword. That fear of failure combined with the pressure to excel academically can really contribute to heightened anxiety levels. And that anxiety can really then expand into their social interactions. So we need to, all of this to say, we need to create a supportive social environment for these kiddos where we can provide them with opportunities to be with their intellectually like peers, utilizing talent-based flexible grouping that really capitalizes on their strengths to help establish a positive image with their peers and build their own self-esteem. So when we think about grouping, there's multiple ways to think about how you group students. You can use achievement or ability grouping, but sometimes taking a talent focused approach, you're a great writer, so your role in the group is going to be to write. You're the fact finder, the researcher, and again, thinking about how you can combine those personality types and what are their strength areas and build the then talent focused groups can be really powerful because they start to see again that understanding how we're all different and we have different needs. They start to see what each person can contribute. um Pairing students with mentors or older peer buddies can really offer some valuable social supports for them. And those mentors can be other educators, it may be you, it may be community members, it may be those older students, but who share similar interests with them, that they can really explore those areas of interest at a deeper level. We also want to think about the creative environment, and this is one that encourages our ADHD students to learn through trial and error, to use imagination, and to be able to think critically to solve problems. So by leveraging such learning skills as setting goals, sharing knowledge, and building relationships, this creative learning environment really helps students practice and develop their own theories and ideas, and really helps to set them in motion. You in this environment, you're helping them to develop their creative capacities, and this can have both a direct and indirect benefits for these students. So rather than feeling penalized or embarrassed for taking a chance, students can feel comfortable trying new things and making mistakes inside of this creative learning environment, and that they start to see it not as a failure but as an opportunity to learn. They in thinking about the creative environment, giving them the opportunity to really grapple with real world problems that are relevant to their lives and have no predetermined solution or may have multiple solutions is really important. So our 2E students in a creative environment are really encouraged to make connections between seemingly unrelated topics and ideas, but we give them that time to be creative and to solve the problems in ways in which that fear of making a mistake is taken out of the equation. And it is, again, really seen as a learning opportunity. The fourth environment is that emotional environment. We know emotions impact learning. It impacts our attention, impacts our relationships with others. It happens for us as adults. It happens for our students. So in the classroom, which again, we've already established is a social community, our 2E students' perceptions of safety to share their feelings and thoughts really matters, especially alongside their peers who may not be in sync with their specific intensity of emotion or with their responses. So that supportive emotional environment is really one that is a safe space for emotional expression and development, and helps to foster those positive relationships and builds self-advocacy skills. And you can do this through role play and through modeling. So in this environment, again, students are able to take healthy risks without fear of judgment. And that they again are really understanding that failure that failure in quotes is really a learning opportunity, and they're given chances to practice productive failure, right? So making productive failure. Okay, that didn't work. What can we try next? It's okay. We all hit a roadblock. It's how we address it. What did we learn? And what do we change? So this is really a classroom culture that is responsive to student feedback and asks all students to share their concerns. And in doing so, you help our 2E students and really all students see that they're not the only ones who may be challenged by a particular assignment or just challenged in their social interactions. They start to see the similarities that they share. Um, some 2E students, again, we talked about, have a level of anxiety that can interfere with their school success. So building a positive emotional environment plans for what are those predictable stressors for that learned expert or for that practical manager. What are those stressors that might come up for our creative producers or people persons, right? My little kiddo that had to bounce to think, there were going to be times when he had to sit, right, during a standardized exam, and everything had to be quiet, and you couldn't have those distractors. So again, how do you plan for those and help prepare students when those times are approaching well in advance, so that it's not a shock to their system? So it really means listening to and validating students' concerns, and then teaching them to become self-aware. This is going to be a point that can cause me stress. What are some coping skills I can do? Is it deep breathing? Is it meditation? Are there relaxation strategies I can use? Do I need to make sure I have a fidget with me? What is it that I can do to help mediate and help me cope with that stress in this moment? Because I know it's going to just be a moment in time. And then I can go back to my classroom will change, and I can go back to being my creative producer self or my practical manager side. Um, so very important about how do you help develop that emotional environment. And then the last piece to consider is how the spaces within that physical environment meet the needs of our ADHD students. So this gets to that point we were talking about. What are those spaces that allow students to pace and move around without distracting others who would be distracted by that? Providing alternative seat choices or places for students to be able to stand up and work, like my little Anthony and his need to bounce. These students need those opportunities for brain breaks. I told you about the assignment I would give my pre-service teachers, where they had to design the classroom and support what they were doing from a social emotional perspective. Um, and one of the questions I would always ask them is, or well, it wasn't a question I would ask, I would say, you decide, and I use the terminology very specific, are you going to create a timeout space? You can or you can't, but either way, you have to justify why you included it or why you did. And I did that because I learned something as a young teacher. If I we tend to think, and this is why I say I use timeout, because timeout has that certain connotation of you did something bad, you have to go to timeout. But if we don't have a place for students to be able to step away and take that brain break, they're going to find it. Right? In my classroom, I didn't create it, but in my class, I didn't intentionally create it, but my students quickly identified it as the little library section. I had a little, some of you are my age and may remember the old Papazon chairs that were kind of like, bamboo furniture with a big floppy cushion that would go in it. And they had the single Papazons that were round, and then they had the long sofa-like ones that were oval, and I had one of those in my library, and it kind of served as the barrier between the library area and the rest of the classroom. And so that students self-identified that as the place where they wanted to go to just find peace. It was a very peaceful area. And quickly, it became the norm in my classroom that if students needed to step out of a situation to refocus and recenter, they could just go there, right? They might ask me, or if it was we were in a workspace, that it was a place they could just go and they could calm and recenter, refocus, and then jump back in. Ultimately, these 2E friendly environments provide choice and control for these students and really enables them to learn in ways that best suits their needs and preferences. So we need to understand that these spaces have to be flexible and adaptable. We can't just rely on doing the same thing over and over again. How do we need to continually change to address? Because every year we're getting a new batch of students with different needs. How do we adjust to meet those needs? And really allowing the students to become co-constructors of those learning environments, allowing them to be able to customize their learning environment, even if only during specific tasks. And I know we've only got 10 minutes left, so I'm skipping some pieces around dual differentiation, but again, you're going to get these slides, so you'll be able to get this information. I want to jump to these last few slides so we can and get through them, and then have a few minutes for questions and comments. So things we need to think about: the environment, helping students identify their areas of strength, and really encouraging them to ask questions and seek new knowledge. This really helps them. This can help them develop their organizational systems that really meet their own individual needs, but in a very comfortable and non-threatening space. And so it's really important. Again, flexibility is key. And this may mean giving up of some of our control, allowing our classrooms to be a place of controlled chaos, where it seems where there's can be constant activities, but everybody knows their space, has their space, and their needs are being met. Giving our ADHD students that opportunity to really develop their talents. We know it can be difficult for these kiddos to maintain attention and sustain effort, especially when they're working on activities or tasks that they see as less desirable, that don't match up with their interests. So we need to give them opportunities to make choices, to be able to take on responsibility within the classroom and attempt tasks that are meaningful for them to be able to produce, achieve, and succeed, and to understand that that failure is not failure. Failure is an opportunity to learn. We also need to give them that gift of time, time to think, time to process, time to incubate. We often see on IEPs that extended time accommodation. Well, if you just say, okay, I'm going to give you this, and everybody else has to do it in 30 minutes, but you get 45 minutes. Well, the proclivity of our 2E students is going to be, well, I've got extra time, so I can go do something over here. What we really need to give them true time to be able to think and process. We need to encourage them to be able to reflect on their own experiences and really reinforce that they are not alone. That others, there are others, their gifted peers, their neurotypical peers that are challenged by some of the same fears and worries that they building a space that encourages their independence and promotes their self-advocacy. It's really important to share stories of famous, accomplished people who overcame their own learning differences. So who are those folks like an Adam Levine or a Richard Branson, who are two E's, individuals who struggled in school. Clint, our drummer from the beginning, right? That's really our opportunity to be that Mr. Jensen who makes a difference in these kids' lives. Finally, that creativity piece, giving them an opportunity, I say, to help them find their happy place, right? This is, again, that place that helps them focus, calm, and center themselves during high periods of stress, uh, allows them to opportunities to increase those dopamine levels and their own motivation and their academic achievement. Most importantly, we need to understand that no matter how much we may try to help, that our support can sometimes be perceived as pressure for these kiddos. So if that happens, we need to give them the freedom to step away from that situation, right? Um, at the end of the day, we need to celebrate what makes these kids unique, their creativity, their motivation, and their resiliency. And it's really my hope that more stakeholders in the field of giftedness will really take up this mantle and help remove the stigma that has kept these ADHD students hidden for so long. Let's go out there and make ADHD happen. And here's my email address. Please feel free to uh, reach out to me at any time. Again, you're going to get these slides, but we have a few minutes left to comments, thoughts. What's going on out there?
Sometimes I think I invite you to speak just so I get a chance to learn stuff too. I've heard you talk about the topic before, and yet every time there's just something new to learn.
There's so much in there. There's so much in there. It's a lot.
I think one thing you were talking about that was interesting was there's a conversation I was having with my 2E case managers last week. We did the William and Mary conference together, and one of our comments that came out of it was, what happens if you overcraft the environment to the point where they can't survive when they're out in the real world? And I think you did a great job of kind of addressing, create the environment now so that they can adapt to the
Yeah.
real world and make it, but also making sure you're making those connections. Because if we do just overcraft that environment, um, they don't survive.
Right. Right. And that is always the key question. Well, if you create if you create these spaces, but then how are they going to understand, the real world's not going to create these spaces for them.
Mhm.
It's not about yes, it's about creating the space in our learning environment, but in doing so, we're helping them develop those skills that they need. And again, part of that is understanding, well, how do I function best? But I know sometimes I got to I may be high on practical manager, but there's going to be times when I have to tap into my creative producer side. May not be my favorite thing, but I need to do it in this situation. It's about building that self-awareness so that they can build those coping skills, and then they're better equipped to go out and face a variety of situations in the world. It's not going to happen in 6 months or 1 year, but if we're building this over time, those skills develop.
And I cut somebody else. Julie, were you saying something? I thought I saw somebody jump on. Yeah, someone commented in here. It is a lot.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
How amazing is this class? Um, I learned so much. We have this kid who likes to all the time arguing, and he get like super frustrated when something is wrong, and he
Hmm.
thinks I'm right, and that's one problem. And the other problem, I think, is with the teacher. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes teachers, they wanna do her way. You have to do this, and you need to finish this, and they don't think about the kid. He's
Yeah.
special, and he needs something different, and
Right.
we need to make any worksheet, any work different. But
Yeah.
sometimes we
Yeah.
don't have the help with the teachers. Sometimes it's a little complicated.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about work with my pre-service teachers. So I taught the course I taught them was the one Ed Psych survey course that they got. We all remember that course. It's the one where and I would tell them they would see my syllabus and it was massive. And I'm like, you have to understand that we're going to cover a different topic every week that should be its own course. Its
Mhm.
own semester long course, and we're going to cover it in 2 hours and 45 minutes and move on to the next one the next week.
Mhm.
But I would always tell them on day one, if you don't take anything else from this course, remember that on the first day of school, when you're greeting all those 20, 30, 150 little sets of angel eyes, whether you teach elementary or secondary, you have to remember that the first person who needs to change is you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can't
Exactly.
keep doing the same thing over and over again because it's easiest for you.
Hmm.
We have to understand that we get a new batch of kids, and even over the course of a year, those kids needs change.
I think this classes needs to be like a mandatory for all staff members of the MCP or all I don't know schools, because it's something important that as adults, as a peer educators, we need to learn. Like, I don't know. That's what I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Well, get the message out there. Take all of the information from tonight and all the weeks you've been in this class and spread the word. Make
Exactly.
it happen.
Yeah. So good job. Yeah, I'm learning a lot, and thank you guys for doing this. Yeah.
Matt, so we did have a question in here. Um,
Mhm.
I read a good book by Gabor and Mate, and he discussed dopamine and addiction. And what's a good article maybe for understanding more about dopamine and ADHD?
That's a good question. I can't uh uh in the slideshow I do address, let me see if I can uh do this real quick in my show and so I can find it real quick.
And while
I
Matt's
have
looking
the
for that,
citation in a citation in the on the slides where I talk about uh
it was the 2013 article you referenced.
yeah, it's a little bit of an older article, but it's a good place to start.
Excellent.
Yep. And
And
and the citation is right there on the slide, so easy to find.
see, I was paying attention. I look all over the place, but I was paying attention. Um, and I mean, for some people I saw about, bringing this back, I love it. Every year someone says your course should be mandatory for everyone. And I agree because I get paid to teach the course. But outside of that, my team will always come out, my team. AEI, because Twice Exceptional is me, but AEI, there's like four of us now. And we've been doing, in fact, I think some of you guys have done some of the presentations with us. We've been doing one called Gifted in Plain Sight in a variety of different elementary and middle schools where we go through kind of how do we identify kids who are not identified through traditional systems and then how we can change things in our classrooms to support them. So if I haven't come out to do it for your school yet, talk to your staff development teacher. Abby and I are happy to come out and do it during a staff meeting. It was a 75-minute presentation that we have done in as little as 30 minutes. I really like 45 to 60. But these are the kinds of things that we do talk about in that more like practical application, because that does always become like that challenge piece. Like
Mhm.
we're getting so many more canned curriculum and we have so many standards crammed in. And so, Matt, we have this thing up here called snow. I know in Texas, y'all probably don't have to deal with that much. But we had so much snow this year that we've already been extended an extra 5 or 6 days.
Oh,
And we're trying to
wow.
figure out like we extend at the end of the year when all the testing is already done. We still want to have meaningful instruction for our kids. And like, there's just so many parameters and things that are crammed onto us.
Yeah.
And then we have to make all these adaptations for our students, which we get really torn between the people who are, I desperately want to make these changes for my kids, but I'm also really hemmed in by what the school system expects of me. And so I get that that is absolutely a challenge. And I think from my perspective, at least the reason I bring people like Matt in and the reason I teach this is because if you have the foundational knowledge, as you find your comfort with your administration, with your curriculum, I know a lot of our curriculum are new. We're about to get a new math curriculum next year. Um, as we find those spaces, that's where we make the room for our students. And so if you at least know that it's a thing and you know what it is, you can start finding the space for it. The reason it's hard often is because we're retroactively thinking about it. You think about the kid you had last year, if I had only known, you're going to have a kid like that again. So now you know, and you can plan more proactively as you move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. The numbers may shift, but all of the needs are still going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking in a different class, or maybe it wasn't this class, and it was something else I was doing. I don't even know anymore. We were talking about how sometimes twice exceptional is like two different kids. You have your home kid and your school kid, or you have your math kid and your English kid, and they're just entirely different personalities in different settings. And then you're like, well, if you're practical manager here and you're creative person over here, how do I manage those two things when you're flip-flopping throughout the day? I don't have a
Yeah.
great answer, but it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel that theory part coming out for me sometimes. Or I'm like, I just want to talk about all the theories of these things.
That's the fun stuff.
It is. And this is
But
why we can sit at
it's
conferences for
important
hours
to
and
have
talk.
these conversations because as our understanding increases, then we can start to see, okay, how do I better understand how I can take that theory and apply it in practice. And so that's why spaces like this and opportunities like this, where you have courses that you can take that expand your knowledge, you can start to really think about, okay, even tonight, I'm sure many of you were sitting here as we were talking about each of those personality types. You were like, yep, I know that kid. Yep. That's this one in my classroom. Here's that one, right? You quickly were able to identify at least four kids, one for each personality type, if not more.
Mhm.
And that's the first piece. It's like, okay, then I can understand. Okay, now I have a better understanding of this kid. Now, how can I take that understanding and go back into my classroom on Monday morning and start applying that to really better
Well,
meet them?
the other piece of it was the number of people who are like, oh, now I get my kid, or now I get why I do that. And I think there's also a piece to this. Like twice exceptional people gravitate towards each other. It's
Yeah.
sometimes how we end up in our own echo chambers where, like I often say, like 100% of my world is twice exceptional, even though twice exceptional is only about 3% of the population,
Yep.
because we all gravitate towards each other. So sometimes I think people who take this class, it's because you are twice exceptional, even if you don't know it, or your child is. If you're finding measures of peace at home because you're learning stuff here, that's worth its weight in gold, and it makes you a more effective teacher just because you're calmer in your home life. So,
Yep. Well, and to your point, Sarah, I completely changed my entire work environment setting to one where all I do all day, every day is talk about 2E and interact with 2E.
mhm. Yeah,
It is my entire work world, and I am so much happier as a result.
actually, it is hard to find people who are more immersed in 2E than I am on a daily basis, but you and Susan take the cake on that one because I'm pretty sure your entire, I don't know if you have it. I like to call them normies. I don't think you have any normies on staff over there. You guys are all twice exceptional. So
We are in our own unique ways,
I
most
at
of
least
us.
have to
Yes.
talk to the normies sometimes out there.
Yep. Yep.
Just thank you guys so much for staying. I know we're almost 10 minutes past class time. As always, I'm going to turn off the recording. You do not have to stay. At some point, I have to go figure out if my